Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you. And thank you for those who slept out last night. I think you're going to be really pleased with what we have in store for you today. And I'm sure, like me, you can't quite believe that it's been 40 years. I know some of you, not quite that long, but for those of you that were around in 1977, it is truly going to be an awesome celebration. When George Lucas first asked me to join Lucasfilm, I thought I had some idea of how thrilling and surprising and frankly emotional this was going to be. You know, creating more of an expanded Star Wars universe. But what I've experienced has really exceeded my wildest dreams. And you and the films are the most important part of that journey. Your passion, your dedication, and your love of Star Wars, you guys have no idea how that inspires us every single day. We consider all of you a part of the Lucasfilm family. And what an honor it's been to also work with some of the original trilogy filmmakers and the cast and crew, and also some of those filmmakers who weren't even born when Star Wars first came out. But the greatest honor for me is to acknowledge the man whose collective genius has brought us all together today. Please welcome none other, my Yoda, George Lucas.
Welcome to Celebration, George. Does that always happen when you walk into a room?
Not like this.
No.
Not like this.
So, firstly, thank you for being here at Celebration.
Thank you.
I mean, it's absolutely incredible. We're celebrating 40 years of Star Wars. How do you feel? How does that make you feel? Apart from old.
Well, the shock was, I hired you when you were 11 years old.
Yeah.
And now you have gray hair. Let me know what 40 years is.
Well, it's the stress of the business, you see, that you introduced me to. That's what's done it. So, now watching that video that we saw, I mean, it brings back so many fantastic memories. The moments, the people, the fans, and of course, among those faces in there, two faces that are of true legends that are no longer with us, sadly. We recently lost Carrie Fisher and Kenny Baker. Now, absolutely. Now, these were two people who were inspirational to me in my early career, and I just want to acknowledge that we all love and miss them, and will continue to celebrate their legacies during this show today, at the event, and also beyond. Now, George, cast your mind back, all the way back to the early 70s. I want to know about that moment you first came up with Star Wars. Where were you? What was going on?
Well, you know, again, Star Wars evolved. It didn't come out in one thing.
Well, there wasn't a moment. You were
there was a moment, but it was like an idea.
See,
and the idea was more, I would like to make an action movie, which is more like a Saturday matinee serial that I enjoyed as a kid, but imbue it with mythological, psychological motifs, because we don't have any of those today. So I said, well, I'm going to take these two things and put them together. And again, I did it, and then a few years later, I ended up making a deal with United Artists. They said, what other movies do you have? Because I was making a deal for American Graffiti. I said, I have this sort of space opera thing. They said, okay, we'll do a deal for that. The one thing you've got to learn about studios is that if you get your break, you say, I got a script. They say, well, we'll do that, but we want to own you. We want to do all the films you ever make in the world. And you say, well, that's fantastic, until you get to the next level and suddenly you realize you've signed away your life. But, so anyway, it wasn't really until, because I wasn't even thinking about it. I was thinking about American Graffiti. That was the movie I was making. And so then what really happened was, after American Graffiti, the studio considered it to be so bad they wouldn't release it. So I was out of a job. I'd made one movie, which was a cult favorite, which I liked, but nobody else did. And then
I think they did.
And then I did this other rock and roll film, which wasn't even good enough to be released. So when I went into the world, there's this other side of all this, which is, I say, they want to own you for life. Well, if you have two films that aren't successful, they don't want to see you. They don't even have lunch with you. They don't want anything. They don't even know who you are. So, but in American Graffiti, in an effort to get people to surround it, we had all these screenings, and at one of the screenings, the head of 20th Century Fox came, and Alan Ladd Jr., and he just came up to me afterwards and says, I love this movie. I think this is the greatest movie of all time. I want to do your next movie. I don't know what it is, but you're a talented guy, and I want to make the movie. I said, well, I got this movie. It's sort of a space opera thing. We have, you know, I have big dogs driving spaceships. And he goes,
that's a good pitch.
He said, okay, I'll do it. And he followed me all the way through, even though the board of directors and said, what in the world is this? Wow. And right up until the very end. And he fought for it, and he helped me make it. And that's when I began to own the idea, because I was still writing scripts. And any of you that read the books, you know, I took an idea and I was looking for a story, I was looking for a thing, I was looking to make it be something. And so I went through a lot of different versions of it, until I finally got to the one. And even when I was shooting in Tunisia, I was still rewriting. So, you know, the idea was simply to do a high adventure film that I loved when I was a kid, with meaningful psychological themes. And, you know, I don't know what I felt. It was like a really cockamamie idea. So I did that. But, it, you know, again, seeing the film tonight and seeing it when we were shooting in various places after the first one, you know, seeing all the kids, you know, it's hard for people to realize, and I'm not supposed to say this, and I wasn't supposed to say it then, but, you know, it's a film for 12-year-olds. That's...
But it brings out the kid in all of us, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it was designed to be a film, like mythology, of this is what we stand for. You're about to enter the real world. You're 12 years old. You're going to go on into the big world. You're moving away from your parents being the center focus. You're probably scared. You don't know what's going to happen. And here's a little idea of some of the things you should pay attention to. You know, friendships, honesty, and trust, and doing the right thing, living on the light side, avoiding the dark side. Those are things that it was meant to do, and obviously the real thrill was when I see some of those little things, but I see the fans And we, you know, when we were in Spain shooting Padme's palace, you know, there were 10,000, like here, and they were all little tiny kids. They were reaching through this fence. It was a metal fence. It was like, you know, the White House. It was a, you know, it's a national landmark, that palace.
Yeah.
And they were all reaching their hands out, even little tiny ones. They had no idea who I was, but all they wanted to do was touch my hand. And I said, you know, this is what I did it for. Everything, none of it makes any difference, except you know, because in the real world, you know, the critics, certain fans and things, you know, they're not very kind. But when you see all these little kids and you see the look on their face and what it means to them, it forgives everything.
Well, you know, George, I was absolutely, yeah. I was one of those kids, you see. I mean, at 7 years old, I remember seeing Star Wars, and I immediately fell in love with it. But little did I know at that point, 4 years later, when I was 11, you would give me the opportunity to go to that galaxy far, far away and meet my heroes, which was incredible. And since then, Star Wars has become an integral part of my life and career. Not a day goes by that I'm not talked about Star Wars, somebody doesn't talk to me about Star Wars. And I just want to have this opportunity now to say thank you sincerely, George, for all of the opportunities you've given me and for making that small boy's wish come true. So thank you very much indeed. And I've got a letter here, actually, that I wrote to you just after we finished filming Jedi back in 1983. Dear Mr. Lucas, my name is Warwick. I hope you remember me. I helped you make the new Star Wars film last year. I hear that the film is being released in this country on June the 2nd, and that a few of the toy shops in London have some of the new figures. I hope this is not too rude of me to ask, but would it be possible for you to send me the very latest figures and walkers? Now, I was hoping very much that there might be an Ewok or Jabba the Hutt. I was a Jabba the Hutt fan, obviously. I did enjoy myself with you and the members of the film unit. And keep remembering what a terrific experience it was. Kind regards, Warwick. And here's a picture of the 13-year-old me with my wonderful collection of vintage Star Wars figures. Wow. And you know what? I've still got that collection to this day, minus the vinyl figure capes. You always lose them, don't you? So I've still got it all. I've still got it all. Now, an important part of the Star Wars legacy has been the stories told on television. For 6+ seasons of the brilliant Star Wars Clone Wars, fans of all ages learned more about the characters they know and love, but were also introduced to a vast array of new characters that are now fan favourites. That legacy continues with the critically acclaimed Star Wars Rebels. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Star Wars Rebels executive producer and supervising director, Dave Filoni. Hey, Dave. How are you?
Hey, guys. We good? You hear me?
Welcome, Dave.
Hey, wow. Crazy.
So,
who are you again?
Yeah, it's starting early.
So
This is one of my kids. This is one of my kids. He didn't start when he was 11, but, you know, he did start when he was very young.
Yeah, well,
And he had a lot of bad ideas that had to be purged from his mind.
Purged they were, yes.
Yeah.
Dave, I mean, George is alluding to that there. You've learned a lot from George, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
He's kind of a mentor, yeah?
Yeah, I would say I'm really lucky, you know, I mean, listening to George talk about the movies. What you just experienced, hearing him talk just now, is kind of what I was able to get for 10 years working on Clone Wars, and they're important lessons. And I would say the most important lesson there, honestly, and it kind of combines everything, is he used to always tell me, don't be afraid. And to explain what that is to me is like, it seems very simple. Most of the big ideas you have are very simple. But when you're coming on board to like direct this major franchise that all of you love and around the world people love, it's easy to get overwhelmed by that and that idea. And that is going to limit you, and more importantly, limit your creativity if you become afraid of it. So you can never be afraid of things, to try things, to experiment, to do things that haven't been done. When we would find something that a lot of people would say, well, you can't do that, it's the first thing George would say, okay, we're going to do that. From the way that we produced the Clone Wars, which was not with storyboards traditionally, we did a completely different way. We had a program that George had been developing, and he said, we're going to use this new program. It's not tested, but it will never work unless we put it on production. I know it'll be difficult, but I need you to do it. And we did it, and the show got incredibly better because of that. So, I mean, it's just a true thing in life, as you've always said. Just don't be afraid to make no decision out of fear. That's the key.
George, tell me why you wanted to bring Star Wars to television.
Well, I'd done Indiana Jones for television, and it's a great experimental cauldron because there's not that much at stake. You're not saying here's $100 million, it's all on your shoulders, and the next 4 months, if you screw up, it's all gone. It's a way to be able to put out a lot of product, a lot of stories, and that's really why we started Clone Wars. I said, this is an interesting idea. We could do a lot of stuff in this. And so it really came out of the idea that there's a lot of stories there, and I'd like to tell those stories, but would never be able to put them in a theater, because they're more interesting as a long form than they are as a short form. So that's why I experimented in television, both, all of the stuff, which, as I say, part of it is the stories and be able to play with stories and do things that nobody would ever do. I mean, my whole life is, well, you can't do that. And Dave had to put up with the same things that everybody at ILM had to put up with. You know, Dennis Muren and those guys and John Knoll, they all had to put up with me. And I would come in the morning, and I'd say, we're going to do this and this and this and this, and their jaws would drop, and they say, oh, he's not really serious. I say, we can't do this. And I'd say, you can do it. Come on, we'll do it. And we did. I pushed them through it, and they did it. They came through. It was like, you know, everything, a lot of the things we did had never been done before. And that scares everybody, because we don't know how to do this. I said, well, we'll figure it out. He said, but the show, the thing. I said, well, we'll figure it out. But with ILM, we went from old-fashioned visual effects to digital effects and created the digital cinema. And it was the same thing with animation, especially the Clone Wars, which we're trying very hard, and I think we succeeded in doing a feature-quality TV show. The lighting, the characters, the animation was all feature quality. And we did it on a TV budget. And we were able to tell stories and expand the universe and bring in, you know, great characters like Ahsoka and that we would never have been able to have. So, George, you're always raising the bar, aren't you? That's what you do. Yeah. You raise the bar and everyone else follows. You're always leading the way with this stuff. Yeah. So, so Dave, episodic TV, social media, it allows Lucasfilm, the cast and the crew to have a direct connection with fans. Why do you think that's so important today?
Well, I am a fan, so I mean, it's easy for me to answer. I mean, you look out here, and the TV series let us do something kind of unique, which was we were on all the time, week to week. So we were able to give fans a Star Wars storytelling experience every week. And in today's media world, you know, people wanted to connect with us more and more and more, and the actors on Clone Wars were really good about being out there, being open with people, connecting with the fans. It's a way of, you know, making this the community that you see. And it's something that we respect at Lucasfilm. We know how much people love this, how important it is to them. So it's important to reach out to them and make you guys feel as much a part of it as we can. I got to say, it's been a real privilege for me to be a part of this in any small way that I have been, to be up here with you guys, you know, because I grew up watching your films. And the only thing I always think is, like, your films must have really worked, because I really got the message that you were trying to tell. I've grown up, when you see these characters like Old Miss and you say, I shouldn't do that, you know, because Luke wouldn't do that. That's the wrong thing to do. And that's the point of telling the story in the first place, is to give you that kernel of inspiration. And now I do feel the responsibility to pass that on, especially what you taught me, Master. I will pass it on as best I can.
Well, Dave, we'd like to thank you for all you've given to the Star Wars universe. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Dave Filoni. Now I've got a treat for all of you. It's a very special message from someone who wished he could join us here today. I think you'll recognize him.
Hello everyone. I hope you're having a good time. Wow, 40 years of storytelling, mixing myth, mythology, legend, technology in this extraordinary cinematic form. I've been very honored to play Qui-Gon Jinn in The Phantom Menace. I'm actually here on location in the Canadian Rockies. We're making a movie, a very unofficial movie, about Jar Jar Binks and what happened to Jar Jar. Spoiler alert, he did go to the dark side. Have a great time, everyone. May the Force be with you. May the Force be with you always. Take care.
The lovely Liam Neeson there. Thank you for that, Liam. Now let's take a step back to the films where we learned always two there are. That was Yoda, by the way. Please welcome Ian McDiarmid and Hayden Christensen.
George just said dark side rock stars, but because of your reception. Thank you.
What a wonderfully sinister reunion we have here. It's fantastic to see you both.
You are worse.
It's really good to see you guys.
So, Ian, George created for you some deliciously evil scenes.
Yes.
Do you have a favourite?
Of all the deliciously evil scenes, and there are many, in fact, I can't think there is one scene that isn't deliciously evil. The one that stands out for me is in Revenge of the Sith, and that's when we all get to go to the opera. George will remember that he wrote that scene originally in another office, and I kept getting bigger and bigger offices all the time as I got more and more powerful, because you know that's what happens. And then he said, no, I think we should go somewhere else for a change. So we went to a theatre, and the reason I like doing that so much, because I'm a theatre actor too, but more than that, Hayden and I could really sit down and, from my point of view anyway, have an evil chat. And I think, George, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's one of the longest dialogue scenes in the whole of the saga. And I was allowed to tell a story, you know, and really connect. So that was exciting too.
Fabulous, fabulous. Hayden, tell us what it was like working with Ian, a hugely experienced actor. Were you intimidated at all?
Oh, working with Ian was just a real treat and a privilege. I mean, everyone knows that he's such an amazing actor, but he's also an incredibly generous actor, and really kind of took me under his wing and was just very caring and giving, and I owe a lot of what I was able to accomplish in episode 3 to being able to work with Ian. You know, that scene that he's talking about was one of my favorites, and I remember just being so enraptured with the story that he was telling that I almost forgot that I was acting in the scene. I was like, oh no, I got to do my part now too. But it was you know, he's so captivating in his work, and it was amazing.
Well, it's a truism that older actors learn from younger actors too, and working with him was a great learning experience.
I'll just say, the one testament to Ian's acting and how great he is he's the nicest, loveliest, kindest, sweetest guy in the world. He is nothing at all like the Emperor.
Yes, well, maybe occasionally.
So Hayden, not only did you deliver a brilliant acting performance, but also your lightsaber battle at the end of Revenge of the Sith was epic. Can you tell us a little bit about your stunt training for that final battle?
Yeah, sure, of course. I mean, all of the lightsaber work was some of my favorite parts of getting to play this character and be a part of the Star Wars world. You know, it was just a childhood dream come true. But I will share with you one of my challenges. You know, I had sort of been conditioned from a very young age to make the sound effect when I'm swinging a lightsaber. And, you know, I know this is something that Ewan maybe struggled with a little bit too, but it was a difficult habit to break. And I remember on a couple of occasions, George, you would come over after we had filmed a fight scene, and, you know, in a very encouraging way, you would say, hey, you know, looks really great, but I can see your mouth moving, and, you know, you don't have to do that. We add the sound effects in afterwards, and I was just so focused, I wasn't even aware I was doing it, but, you know, still to this day, I pick up a lightsaber and I can't help it. It just happens. So.
And these guys, Ewan and Hayden were so brilliant at it, and they practiced every morning, and I used to occasionally see them when I popped in to practice a little. But the extraordinary thing was, every time we did the takes, there must have been about 20, probably more, they did the whole sequence, which was absolutely extraordinary. And when you see it in the movie, it's terrific, but unnecessarily it's edited and split up. And I used to say they should take their sabers, both of them, and get on the road to show how brilliant fighters they really were.
Now, Ian, tell us about your first meeting with George and how he described this character to you.
Oh, yeah. Well, he didn't. George doesn't go in for lengthy explanations, which is great. We met very briefly over lunchtime with Richard Marquand. This is, of course, Return of the Jedi. And I was very pleased to meet them both, thrilled, of course. And then we said our polite goodbyes, and I went back home, and the phone was ringing. My agent said, "You've got the part." I said, "Oh, well, that's great. What's the part?" And he went, you know, agents do, leafing through piles of, you know, papers, and they said, "Oh, apparently he's called the Emperor of the Universe." So I said, "Oh, well, I guess we're doing it then." And from then on, it was makeup, hood, yellow eyes, and the script. And I think most of my information, and most actors would agree about this, came from the script. Although George was always around and very helpful, but of course he wasn't specifically directing that movie. That was Richard. And of course I got to go on doing it. And when we met again before the prequels, George was there wearing a very similar shirt to the one he's wearing today. And he said, "Oh, can we get you a drink?" I said, "Well, I'll just tell." No, it's just, coffee, water. I said, "I'll have the water." And then he said, "Do you know anybody who wants to play an emperor?" So I said, yeah, that's me. And that was the audition for the prequels. And then he said, there are two characters. The character he would play in this is Palpatine, of course, and he's a hypocritical politician. We've all got to start somewhere. And but there's this other character, and he didn't tell me the name. Who's in the background? He does this and he does that. And I thought I'd really like to have played that other character. And then I got the script, and I realized I was playing both of them. And so did you eventually, apparently.
George, isn't there a story you were particularly taken with Ian's nose, though?
Oh. Well,
you liked look at his profile now. It's quite amazing.
I think you deny this. When we left that very short and agreeable meeting, in the doorway, you said, "Hey, great nose." and I thought, oh, wow, maybe that means I'm going to get somewhere.
Are you sure? I don't remember doing that.
Yeah, you did.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for being so brilliant here today. And
great. Good to see you all.
For your contribution to Star Wars, ladies and gentlemen, Ian McDiarmid and Hayden Christensen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, next we have a greeting from yet another member of our Star Wars family, who unfortunately couldn't join us in person today, but sends his 40th anniversary best wishes.
Hey everybody, sorry I couldn't make it, but busy as usual, but I just want to say it's been a real honor and privilege to be a part of the Star Wars community. Thanks, George, for giving me that opportunity and letting me ride it out through at least 3 episodes. Wish I could be there so I could sign everything you brought for me to sign and just say hey to everybody in person. And while you're all sitting there, I know you're all in my corner on this. We know Jedis can fall from incredible heights and survive. So apparently I am not dead. Yes, I have 2 appendages right now, but we know the long and rich history of Star Wars characters reappearing with new appendages and being stronger and better than they ever were. Mace Windu is awaiting his return. Let's make it happen. Kathy, you're sitting right there. I know you know what to do. All you gotta do is say the word. See you soon. On screen, I hope.
The brilliant Samuel L. Jackson. Fantastic. So now I'm going to invite a few more friends to join us here on stage. Please, and I'm sure you will, help me welcome a protocol droid, a Wookiee, and the Baron of Cloud City, Anthony Daniels, Peter Mayhew, and Billy D. Williams.
Good to see you.
Welcome. Have a seat there. Wow, welcome gentlemen. The last time I saw you 3 together, you were dancing up a storm in the Ewok village. And here you are.
Yeah, and I'm still embarrassed about that moment.
So Anthony, tell us about your involvement in creating the original C-3PO suit all those years ago.
Oh God, do we want to go there? George, you promised me, I don't know, fame, glamour, all that kind of thing. And I had to take my clothes off to get there, didn't I? I had to stand naked whilst people threw plaster at my body to make a statue of me. Do you know how disgusting that was? It was pretty bad. But eventually, do you remember Liz Moore, the sculptor, who took my body and then put clay on it and made all the shapes? And then you and other people, it was all made in plastic and whatever. And you used to come and stand in front of me and then poke the knee and say, why doesn't that work like that? Or why doesn't that, the elbow? You were totally involved. And then one day, there were like 6 3PO faces. There was like a Roman face and a kind of alien face, and they were all great, made in clay. And then there was one at the end, and I said, well, I like them all except that one. And you went, oh, that's the one we're having. Do you remember?
Did you do that on purpose because you knew he liked that one? Or was that the one you really liked?
That one. That's where he chose it.
The gold was the best one.
Yeah,
it was good. It was the gold one, yeah. But it was grey at the time. It looked kind of weird. But it worked out really well. And I'm very grateful for your kind of input. Because you had the whole film, and yet you would come and sort of say, that's not right. Or, you know, you'd fiddle with it. And it was your idea to make it all Art Deco, wasn't it? Why was that?
What, the rubber metal?
No, the whole Deco look.
Well, it comes from a long tradition of robots throughout history.
Like there was one other.
But, you know, it's the key to the construction of you was the fact of the face. The face had to be absolutely neutral so that you could act, and your acting would come through, and it wouldn't be counter to what your face was doing. So by having your face be completely neutral, everything you did and your movements, which is why I hired a mime, because the acting was in the physicality of it. So that was it was very hard to come up with a face that was completely neutral. You know, you'd walk in and you say, well, what is he thinking? Nothing. You know, and as soon as you were in it, suddenly this whole personality was there, and this whole character was there, and everything was there. And it wasn't against the...
And as a result of your brilliant performance, you are the only actor...
I didn't hear
I'll say it again. As a result of your brilliant performance...
Yeah.
You can leave through the dock door, it's nice and large.
I'll see you afterwards.
As a result of that performance that you gave, that they all enjoyed, you are the only actor to have featured in all the Star Wars movies. Yeah. Now, please tell us your favourite memory from working on those films, perhaps related to this gentleman over here.
Well, there are so many. You know, I've been backstage listening to everybody's stories. It's brilliant and very, very touching. One does come to mind. Do you remember how kind of flummoxed I was when it turned out on set on the first day that, whereas I'd been reading all the scripts, and R2 says this, 3PO says this, R2 replies, and there was nothing. And I was kind of like, and eventually I said to you, George, when I finished my line, could you like make a sound? Could you like go beep? And you went, sure. Beep. And I decided I was better off on my own, George. but do you remember that? But many years passed, and in fact many films passed, and there we were flying out to Death Valley to go on the road to Jabba's palace. Do you remember?
Right.
Little airplane. And they were setting up this box with a mirror, a window in it to make the matte painting of Jabba's palace. And once they were doing that, I kind of, you know, walked along, sort of going, Lando Calrissian never returned from this awful place. And suddenly behind me was beep, 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 beep. And there was you going, beep, 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 beep. It was the cutest moment ever. I just loved it.
So, Peter, the mighty Chewbacca there, a beloved character. Tell me, Peter, how are you and Chewie similar?
Well, we're the same height, for starters.
Good answer.
And I have blue eyes, which was specific on a certain gentleman's drawings.
Right.
So,
but what I mean is, do you share any of Chewie's characteristics? Anything that any of his skills, perhaps?
Yeah, I can maintain the Falcon.
Can you?
Yeah, oh yeah. You take 3 plugs out and drain the oil. So, yeah, there's a lot of Chewie, and the way I looked at it was that it was a mime character that clever departments would put all the sound in afterwards, and it worked I think it worked very well.
Well, I think we'll all agree here that Chewie wouldn't be Chewie without you, sir. Incredible.
Thank you.
Now, Peter, you had a very special relationship with Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
What's your favourite memory of Carrie?
My favourite memory is she's a hell of a rebel, but she's also a beautiful princess.
Oh.
Think about that. Oh, that me.
George, what was your inspiration for Chewbacca?
Well, the stories are all true, which is I had a large dog named Indiana. It was a Malamute, Alaskan Malamute, and he would ride around in the car in the front seat.
Not driving.
Not driving.
No.
And, you know, I loved that image of driving with his large, because he was, when he sat in the car, he was bigger than I was. And so that was where I said, that would be a fun character for Star Wars. And originally he was originally the Ewoks were, the Wookiees were what the Ewoks became, which is they weren't technical at all, they were primitive. But then as I moved along and I realized I had to cut the Wookiees out of the end of the movie, I decided to save one and make him the co-pilot. And that's really how he ended up with his starring role.
Wow, that's incredible, isn't it? Out of accident comes something so brilliant. Yeah, that's marvelous. So Billy D. Williams, welcome to Celebration.
Yes, sir.
So as Lando Calrissian, what was it like for you to join an already established cast? You were the new boy on the block.
I had a really good time. Everybody was wonderful. And I especially liked visiting the people behind the scenes. That was a very special experience for me, besides working with these wonderful actors.
So were you a fan of Star Wars before you were involved?
Well, I was a fan of THX 1138. Yeah, and that's when I got turned on to George Lucas. And so I was, you know, at that particular time, there were all of these wonderful young filmmakers that were changing the face of cinema. And George certainly was at the helm of that whole period. And so for me, I was pretty established as more so than most of the actors that were in the film. And I was doing some interesting things with my life and my career. And so when I had the opportunity to work with George Lucas, I mean, I thought that was like going straight to heaven.
That's fabulous.
No, seriously, it was a wonderful, extraordinary experience that I'm very happy to have had.
Wow, no, it is. Now, Lando is a very smooth character. Did you bring a lot to the character? Is that a lot of Billy D. Williams in there, or did George say you this is how it should be? How did that
George and Irv Kirshner, and but the thing is, the two components: the cape.
Oh yes.
And Calrissian, an Armenian name, I-A-N. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. Let me play around with this whole idea. Because I didn't want to do a kind of stereotypical, cliche kind of character. I wanted to bring something really special to it. Something bigger than life.
Well, you certainly did that. You certainly did that. Now, George, it must feel pretty rewarding to be surrounded by 1, 2, 3, dare I say 4 of your greatest character creations? Why don't we go crazy and make it 5? Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Hamill!
Too kind.
Welcome, Mark. So, Mark, what does it mean to you to be here at Celebration? We're celebrating 40 years of Star Wars as well.
Well, I can never get over the fans. They are supportive. They're with you in good times, bad times. They're more supportive than my actual family. But they criticize me all the time. But listen, to be honest with you, meeting you and hearing your stories and how the movies affected your lives or inspired you, or you met your future wife or husband, the ways being passed down to the next generation, it's really moving, and certainly nothing I've ever taken for granted. I'm always just stunned at the passion that has lasted all these years.
George, what was it about this guy that made you say, this is Luke Skywalker? What qualities did Mark have?
I'm not sure I want to hear this.
Well, we did a lot of testing for a year.
A year?
A year. A year sitting in a little room with, talking to actors every 5 minutes, and then weeding those out and weeding them out, and eventually having them do readings in the room, and then we went on and then we did screen tests. And we did the screen tests with all the sort of finalists for all the three main characters. And we would mix them. So I think we had maybe 2 or 3 of each of you, and you would each test with another person. And so we found the combination of the group that worked the best together, the group that was like ready to be an ensemble, and that played it, as old friends. Because I was trying to get that, even though they start out not knowing each other, I wanted to have the chemistry of them working together built in. And that and the fact that he was shorter than I was.
I tried to talk him out of that line. Does she really have to say that to a little short for a stormtrooper?
Well, I know, it's funny you should say that.
I like short people.
Yeah,
look,
that's why you hired me.
Look, here's the secret right here. I can't even reach the floor. You got long legs.
It's funny you should talk about that audition, because I believe we have a clip of that right now. Let's take a look.
Fear is their greatest defense. I doubt if the actual security there is much greater than on Aquilai or Sullus, and what there is most likely directed towards a large-scale assault.
So you begged George to cut that line, didn't you?
Well, what it was when I read it, intellectually understood what it was. Now, I've never forgotten this after all these years. But we can turn back. Fear is their greatest defense. I doubt if the actual security there is any greater than it was on Aquilai or Sullus, and what there is most likely directed towards a large-scale assault. Huh? Listen. So it makes sense. Fear is their greatest defense, because they're intimidating this gigantic contraption. I doubt if the actual security there is any greater than it was on Aquilai or Sullus, 2 made-up planetoids. I get that. What there is most likely directed towards a large-scale assault. In other words, they're waiting for an armada. We could slip in this little tiny hamburger-shaped Millennium Falcon thing. So it made sense intellectually. The trick was, how can you make it sound like it's spontaneous dialogue that's just rolling off your tongue? Well, not so easy.
I was going to say, he was right. It wasn't a bit much, although it's stuck in your brain.
It's stuck in my brain. I've never been able to get rid of it.
But it was one of those lines up there with, it'll take a few moments for the navigator to calculate the coordinates, or I'm here to send you the message, the one Carrie does all the time, which is, but it was the one that actually said, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, it eventually went away. We never even shot it for when we actually went over.
Yeah, I think the scene itself got cut out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was my favorite because I loved Harrison. I said, oh, look what Harrison has to say. It'll take a few moments for the navigation to calculate the coordinates. He'll never do it. We were making book on whether he'd be able to actually say it.
Well, you know, I'm sitting here as Warwick Davis, but also a fan. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when we've got George Lucas here, we've got C-3PO, we've got Lando Calrissian, we've got Chewbacca, and Luke Skywalker. I mean, it doesn't get much more epic than this, does it? Or actually, maybe it does. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Harrison Ford.
It'll take a few minutes to calculate the coordinates. No. Start from. It'll take a few minutes for the Navicomputer to calculate the coordinates.
Wow.
I said to George, you can type this stuff, but you can't say it. Move your mouth while you're talking, while you're typing it, and I couldn't say it. It took me like 15 takes
Harrison, it's such a pleasure to see you, and thank you.
It's a pleasure to see you
at your first celebration. That's right. Now, I can't believe we managed to keep it a secret, considering you landed your plane on I-4.
Yeah, but it was a good landing.
How did Star Wars impact you 40 years ago? What does it mean to you today?
Oh, it's made no difference in my life whatsoever. It was the beginning of incredible ride. Actually, it wasn't the very beginning. The very beginning was also with George, and it was a part in American Graffiti. And then I went back to doing carpentry work. and then along came George once again, pulled me up by my bootstraps and put me to work in an extraordinary event that we all celebrate. And it's been a good ride.
Absolutely. So George, tell me, what was it about Harrison that initially drew you to him as an actor?
Well, in American Graffiti, I could see, that he was a real talent, and he didn't have much of a part.
Bob Salsa.
So he was actually working with as a carpenter. American Graffiti wasn't a big hit for him. He had to go back to work. Later, I found out it was the casting director that said, "Here, sit out right out in front of the office and pretend like you're building something."
Oh, rubbish. No, I was actually installing a door for for Francis Ford Coppola as a favor to his art director who had built the door, couldn't find anybody to install it. And I said, I'll do it, but I'm only going to do it at night because I don't want all people walking through there while I'm trying to do the thing. And one morning, in walked, while I was finishing up the door, in walked George with Richard Dreyfuss.
Huh? With
Richard Dreyfuss. Remember Richard Dreyfuss?
Yeah, but it was also I was working with Brian De Palma, so he was in that room with me. You remember him?
No.
He didn't want you to be in charge.
No, I don't remember that. But I walked in, and George walked in, which was a surprise, and he was having, I thought, it was an interview for a new science fiction film. Anyway, we just chatted and said hello. But the story has gotten a little warped. I was actually there working. Yeah. No, I wouldn't sit out in front and wait for you, George. I love you, but I don't wait out in front.
You were working.
I was working, making a living. And happily I still am. Thank you very much. And thank you very much.
He got the part because in the end, I asked him, I said, this is about spaceships and flying and stuff like that. And I said, do you know how to fly?
I said, fly, yeah. Land,
His acting, but how was his carpentry? Acting, but how was his carpentry? Extra special.
You don't notice it until you're shooting.
Right. You can have the most brilliant cast in the world, but they have a story to tell. And the story that we had to tell was more than sufficient. It was full of humor and emotion and conflict, and it was a brilliant invention of a mythology that has sustained interest for over 40 years, and that's made up of out of whole cloth by George. And an actor without a story to tell is, might as well go home. So it was a brilliant opportunity for all.
Well, certainly from me and on behalf of all the fans here in the room and throughout the world watching via live stream, thank you, each and every one of you, for your contribution to Star Wars. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Mayhew, Billy D. Williams, Anthony Daniels, Mark Hamill.